This week on Obsessed with Wine.
Part of my goal is to help be the curator, ensuring that you can trust me to give you a good experience. I figure if you come to the Valley and you get to know it, you'll come back, because the more and more you visit, the more comfortable you get, the more you're going to explore and step outside of your comfort zone.
Hello, fellow wine enthusiasts. My name is Wesley Cable. Welcome to another episode of Obsessed with Wine podcast. I get questions all the time from people who want to visit their favorite wine country, but don't know exactly who to hire to assist with transportation. People are always asking if Uber or Lyft are available, because safe transportation is one of the most important aspects of planning a wine tasting trip. For those of you who are visiting the Wilamette Valley in Oregon, I have the perfect solution for you. On this episode, I talked to Kim Myers, an Oregon native and the owner of the Northwest Wine Shuttle in Oregon. Kim has turned her passion for Oregon and the Oregon wine country into a business to help people safely experience all that the Willamette Valley has to offer. In this interview, we discuss the advantages to using a service like the Northwest Wine Shuttle, the beautiful experiences available in the Willamette Valley, and a great wine club available to Oregon residents that allows you to experience wines from different parts of the Willamette Valley and take advantage of discounts on the Northwest Wine Shuttle. Grab a glass of your favorite wine. It's time for Obsessed with Wine. All right, welcome to the Obsessed with Wine podcast. One of the most asked questions that I get about wine and wine tasting is, who do you hire to drive you from place to place? And how do you pick that business or that person? So I'm excited to have Kim Myers, the co-founder of Northwest Wine Shuttle, on the podcast tonight to help answer some of these questions for everybody. So Kim, thank you for joining me. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And thanks for featuring this topic. I think it's an important one, and I love talking about it, of course.
It is. And like I said, I get so many questions from people about who do you hire? Hey, I want to plan a trip, whether it be here in California or really any wine country, and they want to know, what's the best place to start? And so I'm excited to talk to you about this because this is something I'm not very educated in either. So I'm hoping to learn a lot. So the business is called Northwest Wine Shuttle, and you're the co-founder. And so how did you get started with this particular business, and why the experience side versus something else in wine?
So actually, I spent 15 years doing high-tech PR. There was some transitions in the company, and I had been doing it for a while, and I decided to take a break from the business and evaluate my longevity in public relations. And in doing that, I was sitting on the couch with my husband, having some wine. And, at the time we had gone to the Willamette Valley, and we'd go maybe once or twice a year. And he said, well, wouldn't it be great if there was some sort of transit system in the Willamette Valley that would safely get you to these wineries, almost like a hop on, hop off. You could choose where you want to go and get back on and taste at your own pace. And we both kind of thought, gee, that would be fun. That would be an experience that we both would partake in. So we started to do the Google searching. Do these businesses exist? And what we found was that not many of them at the time did exist. So this was around 2016. And there was no hop on, hop off of any sort in the Willamette Valley. And we did find a company in Fredericksburg, Texas, that really did fit what we were thinking about. And so we got some flights, headed over there, connected with the owner, asked all the questions, experienced the hop on, hop off. It's the 290 Wine Shuttle in Texas. And we said, yes, this is something we'd like to bring to life in the Willamette Valley. One of the biggest challenges, though, is that the Willamette Valley is kind of a web of wineries on big vineyards versus Fredericksburg, which are tasting rooms on more like show vineyards on a single road. So we had a challenge ahead of us for sure. But it was that dream, of being in an industry that we've both found interesting personally and wanted to take the plunge. But it's very scary, being a rookie. I still call myself a rookie in the wine industry because it was just, we drank wine, we visited here and there, but we really knew nothing about the industry going into it.
So I saw on the website, you mentioned something about being into viticulture. Do you do other things besides the wine shuttle business there, or is that something that is just something that you're passionate about?
No, it's, for us, it's about being a part of the community out here. I haven't done a harvest yet. That's on my bucket list. I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be a great learning experience. But yeah, for us, it's been kind of about getting to know how the business works, getting to know what the winery's priorities are. For me, as a wine tour company, the winery is my number one customer. I really don't have a product if I don't have, the winery support. So it's been the last few years has really been getting to know what their priorities are, how they sell the product. And the farming has really come into the picture in the last couple of years. And really, I've become more interested in the farming side, the viticulture farming side, as Oregon's faced some really interesting things such as fires and smoke issues. And you had a podcast segment featuring the frost, which is very fascinating up here in Oregon and very new. Our wine country has never experienced a frost like this before. So it'll be one of those seasons of learning and of collecting data. And to me, that's all very fascinating. And so I've been kind of immersing myself and asking a lot of questions to understand this side of things.
Did you grow up in the Northwest? Is that why you have such a passion for it?
I grew up in Oregon, so I've always been an Oregonian, but I lived closer to Portland. So I lived about 10 miles south of Portland and didn't spend a lot of time in the Willamette Valley, as most people know it. And it wasn't until my parents moved to Carlton, which is a cute little wine town here in the Willamette Valley, that we started to get to know the community a lot more, and started to understand the legacy of families who have been here, and not just in viticulture, but in some of the other farming that happens in the valley. It's fascinating. And so, yeah, the interest really didn't perk up for us until we moved out here. So my parents moved out here in 16, and then we moved out here in 19. So in 2019, we finally, committed to this being our new home. And that's where the interest is really spiked.
Besides the obvious of not wanting to drive under the influence, what are some advantages to hiring a company like yours when you're planning a wine tasting event?
Curation, I'd say, is the biggest advantage. When you're going to a well-known wine country, there at a minimum is probably 100 wineries. In the Wilamette Valley, there's around 400 wineries, and that's just in the North Willamette Valley. And so curation, it's an overwhelming thought. And then people get FOMO a little bit, fear of missing out. They want to make sure that if they're going to spend their time and make it to wine country, that they go to that they have the best experience and go to the best places, both from wine quality standpoint and also from hospitality standpoint and ambiance and scenery. I mean, one of the number one reasons people come to the Willamette Valley is for scenery, and we shouldn't forget it. It's not necessarily wine first; it's scenery first, and there's a lot of data for that. So it's something that I keep in mind. But yeah, curation I think is huge, and part of my goal is to help be the curator to make sure, whether it's a private tour or the hop on, hop off tour, ensuring that you can trust me to give you a good experience. But then I also have my own podcast, the 2-minute tasting tips, which, is about giving you reasons to come to the valley. I figure if you come to the valley and you get to know it, you'll come back. Because the more and more you visit, the more comfortable you get, the more you're going to explore and step outside of your comfort zone. And so my goal is to be that gateway, right? So the hop on, hop off shuttle might be the gateway where I've curated a list of wineries, and you can't fail. You just pick 3 and you're going to have a great day. And that's your gateway into understanding, in this case, the Yamhill Carlton area in the Willamette Valley. And hopefully when you see it and you realize how adorable it is and you get to know some of the wineries, you'll say, I'm going to come back. There's more to see in this area. So that's my goal. But if I may also add on to that, I just did a personal trip up to Walla Walla. So I put myself to the test to figure out how I was going to choose wineries to go to in Walla Walla. And it's no small task. I mean, they have 200, 250 wineries. I started by drinking my own Kool-Aid. Curation was the hardest part, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go to a wine tour company. If I'm the curator, clearly that's a great place to start. And so I spent some time trying to find a wine tour company who could solve, at least one day of our wine tasting. And then I challenged myself to plan the second day. And honestly, a lot of that came down to word of mouth for the second day. The wine tour company nailed it on the first day. I could relax as the planner. They did all the work and it was amazing. And then, yeah, the second day, word of mouth, got a couple recommendations from friends and just said, I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to spare myself the stress and go the places that have been vetted by trusted friends and family.
Yeah, people who work in wine, at least at the wineries I go to, I'll always ask, give me a couple of names of some places maybe I haven't heard of that I might like the wine. And they're always great about giving great suggestions of places. And like you said, they usually hit a home run with their choices. So I like to do that as well. So does your shuttle just the Willamette Valley, or do you guys go up to Walla Walla?
Northwest Wine Shuttle is just the Willamette Valley. When I started it, I had big dreams of scaling, and then a pandemic happened, and
Sure. Yeah.
and so we reevaluated. Obviously, we had to make a big pivot, which everybody's experiencing, whether you're on a wine tour or whether you go on your own. And that is, it's a reservation world now. You have to plan ahead. Their staffing is less, so their capacities are less. And so their reservations are full, and you might have to plan 4 weeks in advance. And this isn't the wine country that we were experiencing before the pandemic. It was a lot easier to be spontaneous. And now it's a lot more regimented. And so it's a lot of my content is helping people understand that and respect it, but then also find ways to experience the good old days. Because there are a few wineries here and there that have either reverted back to what I call the good old days, the walk-in, the laying a blanket out and picnicking and lingering and buying a bottle, those moments, which are fewer and fewer, far between, especially in the hot spots in the Willamette Valley, for sure.
With 500 wineries in the Willamette Valley, how do you decide which ones you're going to present to your customers?
And I kind of start with a few questions. My style is to not create this forum for a lot of back and forth email. And, we all have full inboxes. So, I try to be really upfront in the beginning, but I ask a few questions. Some people have a wine preference. So that might be as simple as a white or a red. I prefer whites. I prefer reds. Or it might be a specific varietal. A lot of people come here for Pinot or Chardonnay. Or I ask about winery preferences. If they've done some of their own research, if they've heard word of mouth, a lot of times they'll drop the name of a winery that they have an interest in. And then I look at the region of which that winery is. So, the Willamette Valley has sub-AVAs. I think there's 14 or something of them. And so I look at the AVA that winery resides in and try to find an efficient path. And one of the things I love about that is if you stay focused on a single AVA, then they're going to get to know the wine from that AVA. In Oregon, we boast a lot about the different soil types. And so, that AVA might have the Jory soil, which has very specific Pinot flavor profile than the marine sediment soil in the Yamhill Carlton AVA, for example. And also it's about driving. I mean, people are paying for a specific amount of time on the shuttle, for example. And so we have to be efficient with timing. And so to cross AVAs, especially in the Willamette Valley where there's hills and lots of country roads that are very time consuming, I try to focus on a similar area. And so from that perspective, you narrow it down quite small to wineries that you think might pair well. I like to give a little bit of both. Sometimes if they're open to it, sometimes you get a vibe. People want Domaine Serene, and that's the biggest winery, one of the biggest wineries in Oregon. Then I kind of understand the vibe that they're going for. It's a huge winery, almost like a Napa quality winery. But sometimes I push people to step outside the box and say, hey, would you like to experience a smaller boutique winery in addition to, a more well-established winery with an amazing view? It's also about kind of the hospitality and the vibe that you're going to get. If we go to one place that I know might be a little more regimented, then I'll take them to a place that's a lot warmer in their hospitality. So they're kind of getting to know the Willamette Valley and not stereotyping us for a specific type, but kind of understanding it holistically.
So I can only picture you're your day must be constantly doing research on all these wineries and tasting their wines and doing all that stuff, which sounds like a lot of fun. I'm sure it's really not that way, but you must spend a lot of time doing that, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I committed to getting to know the area and building relationships. And so I established something that I call Tasting Tuesdays, which now most wineries aren't open on Tuesdays. So now we call it Tasting Thursdays. And I'll go to usually one winery, sometimes two, every Thursday. But because I've established that, I really feel like I understand a really broad footprint of wineries and different kinds of experiences. And it still kills me because there's so many, and there's so many I go to every time, and I love them. I love them. I'm like, it makes me sad that I didn't know them before, until that point. But then it makes me so happy that now I do know them and that they're another experience to add to my list. And of course, I personally love to wine taste. It hasn't gotten old living in wine country. So when I find a place that I really adore, I can't wait to bring my own friends and family.
So for somebody like me, I actually really like Northwest wines. There's a winery here, Wilamette Wine Works, which is here where I live in California. And so it's from the Wilamette Valley vineyards, I
Oh
think is
yeah,
what it
okay.
is.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So they have a tasting room here in California. And so that was my first experience with Oregon wine. Is for somebody who isn't as familiar with what's available in Willamette Valley, how would you describe just the wines and what makes it so great?
So from a wine perspective, we are most famous for Pinot Noir. And there's a lot of it, so much of it, and really good Pinot Noir. I mean, it's rare that I visit a place that doesn't make Pinot well. But then you start to get creative and learn how to taste multiple Pinots from one winery and figure out the differentiators. There's so much Pinot that now the Valley is starting to break out and be known for other things like Chardonnay. And I think Oregon claims to do Chardonnay quite different than how a lot of Americans classify Chardonnay, which is the California style of Chardonnay. I like both, but I do love Oregon's approach to Chardonnay because they do treat it differently, where it probably has less of the oaky, buttery flavor profile. It's more of a crisp Chardonnay. And so I encourage everyone who comes to the Valley to try the Chardonnay, even if you believe that you are not a Chardonnay drinker, because it is different than the Chardonnay that I think we grew up with. If you're in Oregon, please enjoy trying something new. And I encourage that from everyone. But yeah, so come to the Valley for the Pinot, come to the Valley for the Chardonnay. Pinot Gris is also a very popular varietal here. But a Gamay is starting to become popular. Yeah, people are starting to plant some different things because the climate's changing and seeing a lot more different white varietals. Bubbles is becoming popular in Oregon.
So you touched on this before we started the interview, but I'm going to ask anyway. Do you actually go out and do the driving with the customers?
Yes. So I do, like I said, I do it mostly when it's a new winery that I haven't experienced or I haven't captured content, because I like to multitask. Being the business owner, I'm kind of tapped for creating the content. So I'm a huge believer in knowing your own business. And a lot of that is being with the customers and also being the customer. So I every year also do my own wine tour where I am the guest. And I actually just had one with friends this last Friday, going into Memorial Weekend. And it's fascinating to be the guest and to have somebody have you on a schedule and tell you when it's time to. And, part of it's glorious. And then part of it's like, oh my gosh, this is what wine touring is. You have an itinerary and you have a schedule. And I now understand when I'm telling a guest it's time to go, how that feels as the guest. So it's a fascinating experience. So I always encourage people to, understand their business inside and out. So of course, driving is very enjoyable.
You might have the best job in the world, I think, just in
It's really
talking to
fun.
you. It sounds like it'd be a blast. Yeah. So when you get to the wineries, do you take the customers through the experience, or is that still done by the winery?
Because everything is a seated experience now, all the tastings are elevated to some degree. They have a narrative about the winery. They have a narrative about the region. And so for me, I never felt like I was adding value by being that person. Every once in a while, I'll get questions in the van. Typically, they're not about wine country. They're like, what's that farm? What's that crop? They're curious about the things around them as we're going. For me, I really like to leave it to the winery. I expect the winery to know their narrative and to share their narrative, and they're going to be much more passionate about it than if it's me sharing it. And also people can connect the dots. I mean, sometimes it's the winemaker sharing the narrative, or sometimes it's the owner sharing the narrative at the winery. And so I think people, when they're hearing the family story, they're also looking at the person that went through it. So it's interesting.
So when you're the driver and you drop off somebody at a winery, right? What do you do? Do you just sit in the shuttle and hang out?
So this is why I got into this, and this is why we founded the Hop on Hop Off shuttle. So yeah, I mean, when I get to a winery and it's a private tour, which means they have their own itinerary, you're absolutely right. The shuttle does not leave. The shuttle's going to stay, and therefore I'm staying. Every once in a while, if it's something unique, I might stay around to learn something right along with the guests. I always take the guests in and get them situated and have that pass off with the winery, of course. And then I'm capturing content, but my other drivers probably are finding a nice place to sit, reading a book, and waiting for the tour to conclude. And that's one of the things that I found kind of inefficient about the private tour side of things. And so this is why we went into the hop on hop off, because in the hop on hop off model, there is no driver sitting. So we pivoted from a true hop on hop off where you can just get off with previous knowledge to a hop on hop off where you still spontaneously choose the wineries when you book, and then we will build an itinerary. So you are on an itinerary, but you're getting basically a private tour. You get your own table at these wineries. So private tour with shared transportation. And what that means is that I'm not sitting. You're not paying for those hours of me sitting. It means that we're moving people constantly on a route. Our job is to figure out those logistics, and I think that's our secret sauce. And your job is to get off when I say get off, and I'll give you the time, and I'll be right back, and then you'll get back on, and you won't know any different, and it will be just like you're having a private tour. Except for in between, you might cross paths with somebody else, and people share notes. How is that winery? How is that winery? I'm going there next. I can't wait. Any tips? And so there's that magical moment of people having the shared experience and connecting. And sometimes they want to taste together. So we've had the flip side of, oh, I want to change from that tasting room to this winery so we can keep having fun with these people. And to the best of our ability, we're usually able to accommodate a lot of different.
I can imagine that the Willamette Valley wineries are excited to have you around to bring people to the wineries and all that. Is there competition from some of the wineries? Like, hey, Kim, we really want you to come out to our winery, or what can we do to help you bring customers to our winery? That kind of stuff. Does that exist?
Yeah. With the Hop on Hop Off shuttle going into 2021, we had people from all different AVAs wanting to build routes in the AVAs. Wineries love their little communities, clusters of wineries, and they're all about supporting, the movement of people across those wineries. And in fact, when you come to a winery, they're likely to refer you to a neighbor. Right? They really want to give the business to a neighbor. And so, yeah, it was a hot commodity. We're still in a recovery mode here in Portland and in Oregon in terms of tourism. And so I don't know that we'll be able to scale for probably a year or two. And then we'll start to consider what building routes look like. And the wineries are ready. I mean, they're on board. And in fact, the reason why we have the hop on hop off in Carlton is because these wineries were willing to step outside the box, adjust their reservation model in order to accommodate me, who's saying, I'm not dropping off at 12 o'clock. I'm dropping off at 12:35 because that's when the shuttle's going to be there. That's how the model works. It's not going to be on a perfect timing. It's going to be random timing, but they've got a dedicated table for our guests on their reservations, and it works. And it's because they were able to support my model and to support the idea of getting these guests. And, we also have a pickup from Portland, which no other tour company has. So we regularly go into Portland for the hop on, hop off shuttle and bring people in from the city. So it's this idea of safe door to door transportation from the major metropolitan area. And these are the people who join your wine club and keep coming back. So it's very valuable to them.
So let's talk specifics then about the Northwest Wine Shuttle. So you've mentioned it a few times, hop on, hop off wine shuttle. So tell me exactly what that is, and if who would it be perfect for? What kind of a person or group?
So the hop on, hop off wine shuttle is perfect for groups less than 6. The sweet spot would probably be 4. From a cost standpoint, once you're over 4, once you're at 5 to 6, a private tour might be more economic. It's slightly more expensive, but you get some extra perks. For groups of 4 or less, you cannot move around wine country for a better price point than what we offer. And the big mission that I had from the very beginning was to make wine country accessible, and affordability is part of that. And so I've been really hard and fast on the hop on, hop off shuttle being an affordable option for people to move. It doesn't make it cheap. It doesn't mean the wineries are cheap. It is literally me saying you should be spending your money on the wine and not on the transportation. And I want people who are in smaller groups to be able to have transportation too without spending $600 for 2 people. The numbers just don't work out very well.
So what do they get with the hop on?
So the hop on, hop off essentially is private itinerary with shared transportation. So when you book, you'll have a list of 7 wineries and you'll pick 3. And then we'll do the rest. So we'll build your itinerary for the day. We'll set your reservations and you don't have to worry. You'll just show up at the pickup time and then we'll tell you when to get off. You don't even have to have a piece of paper. You don't have to look at your phone, nothing. We'll just say, hey, we're at your first winery and we'll bring you in and make sure you get situated and let you know exactly when it's time to board for your next tasting room. So it's a very worry-free way to wine taste. We let you know where you can have food. So some people do bring their own picnics, and some of the wineries on our route do allow outside food, and the rest have food for purchase. So obviously food is covered. We have our guests cover their own tasting fees, and a big part of that is because in the Valley, when you buy, your tasting fees get waived. And so I don't want to take that benefit away from you by collecting that money up front, right? So the idea is if you buy, you should get the benefit of the waived tasting fee. And then, when the day is done, if you chose to get on in Carlton, then you'll come back to the cutest little town, Carlton. There's restaurants and shopping and things, and we get back by 3:30. So you've got another, 2 hours to explore the town before the day is done. So to me, it's just perfect.
So one question I have is, as far as tasting fees in the Willamette Valley, give me a range of what they are, what they cost.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was just listening to your latest podcast with Brenna at Frog's Leap about Napa and how expensive it is. The Willamette Valley isn't there yet, but for most of us who have lived here, the tasting fees keep increasing. So I would say prior to the pandemic, we were in about the $20 range, and that felt glorious, right? $20 is an easy price point to say that's a no-brainer. Post-pandemic, we are closer to the $35 to $50 range. So there's been a huge spike. And I think some wineries are adding some extra value to that. Obviously, it's a seated tasting now, but a big reason why they do that, and I think it's kind of unanimous across wine countries, is because a lot of people wine taste for the experience and not necessarily for the intention of buying wine. And so a tasting fee has to cover that full experience then. Just like if you went to a restaurant, right, and you're paying, the markup on food and wine is huge, and that's because you're paying for an experience. In this case, you get rewarded if you buy wine. Tasting fees get waived. Otherwise, you're paying for the experience.
So typically, a winery in Willamette Valley, how many bottles do you buy to offset the cost of a tasting?
I would say the vast majority is probably around a 2-bottle purchase or $100 purchase. Pinot Noir, since it's so prominent, is around $50 to $70. And so 2 bottles of Pinot would cover your would cover your $100 mark or your 2 bottles and cover your tasting fee. Some people, they'll let you buy 2 bottles of rosé, no problem, and still waive it. Some wineries are a 6 bottle minimum, regardless of the price point. So it's across the board. There's not a lot of consistency.
So just out of curiosity for me, what's the most expensive tasting fee you've seen up there in Willamette Valley?
There's a few wineries who, in lieu of a tasting fee, you're expected to buy a case of wine. So you're talking, $300 to $500. There's one place, EIEIO, right here in Carlton. I think he charges $600, but you get to leave with the case, and you can have up to 6 people, right? But it's going to be 600 whether you're 2 people or 6 people. And then, part of, and it's exclusive with the winemaker, right? It's a one-on-one experience. And in those cases, I do find the value in that. I mean, if you know that you're going to leave with the wine, I think that that's awesome. But it's going to take a specific kind of customer, right?
So then besides the hop on, hop off, you've got the private tour. So tell me about how that works and what people can expect with that kind of experience.
Yeah, private tour is just a more custom way to get around. So we'll pick you up at a destination of your choice and bring you back there. We'll help curate the itinerary. We'll set all the reservations. We'll have water on the shuttle, and then you're paying for the transportation time. So it's just a little bit more custom, essentially. And you can move more people. So in our case, I love passenger vans. I think they're very agile. They're clean. They're easy to keep up. They always are very nice versus a bus or this or that. So for me, we roll in passenger vans, and so we can fit up to 14 people. But most of the time, for most of our private tours, we encourage it to be 8 or less. And that's another kind of trend in the Valley that probably was inspired by the changes of the pandemic in keeping group sizes smaller. And so now probably the ideal size is 6. If you travel with 6 or less, you'll always find reservations everywhere, and it will be great. As soon as you have 7 people, I would say your pool of wineries goes from 100% to 30%, or maybe even 20%. 7 to 8, there's a few wineries that will go up to 8. And then as soon as you're over 8, you're considered a large group. And for many, many wineries, it's going into an event format, it's hard to hear for some people because it feels like a small group. I mean, 10 people I would have never previously classified as a large group, right? I always thought of large group as being like 20 people. A bus. I always think of a large group as a bus-worthy group. And no, a group of 9 could be considered a large group, in which case you're paying event fees and more tasting fees and deposits and bottle minimums and all the things.
So you mentioned that you pick people up. So for example, if I lived in Oregon, would you guys pick me up from home and take me on this private tour, or where do we meet you?
Most of the time, private tours are happening with people visiting, and they could be local Portland people who are staying at a place, an Airbnb, a bed and breakfast, or a hotel. So usually the vast majority of the private tours are coming from within a 20-minute radius of where I am in Carlton, which Carlton's pretty central in the Willamette Valley. So yeah, every once in a while we'll get some people in Portland or the metropolitan area, and they might, and it's residential, right? It's people who are being picked up right from their homes.
If I'm a customer from out of state, which I live in California, so I'm sure you get people from California and all over the place. So if I wanted to visit Willamette Valley and I wanted to use your service, what's the first thing that I do? If I'm flying in, do I fly into Portland? I guess that's probably where I would have to fly in. So how does that all work for the out-of-state folks?
Yes, PDX is where you'll be flying in, and it is a 45-minute drive, 45 minutes to an hour, depending on where you're staying, drive into the Valley. One of the most popular cities to stay in because it has enough lodging options is McMinnville. adorable place. And yeah, it's probably an hour and 20 minutes from PDX. So yeah, expect to rent a car or have a really hefty Uber taxi fee. That is the challenge. And the industry knows it. Commuting from Portland to the Valley is a tricky one and an expensive endeavor. But I would say most people rent a car. And then once you're in the Valley, if you do a wine tour, obviously, it's convenient because it's tricky to navigate around here. So even if you have a car, spare yourself the heartache. Even locals have a hard time navigating. Have somebody else drive. There is no Uber or Lyft in the Willamette Valley. Maybe in California, maybe in some of the more prominent California wine countries, but Willamette Valley and especially post-pandemic, there is no Uber or Lyft. So if you make your way to a winery and think that you're going to call an Uber or Lyft to pick you up, there's a good chance that that's not happening. And I even get phone calls from people from wineries saying, hey, we really need help. Like we need help getting these people back home. And on occasion, we're out there, everybody has to do their part, right, to take care of people who are visiting. So I'd say that the transportation might be the trickiest part. And there's not a lot of public transportation in the Valley either. So having a car to get to restaurants, there are more tour companies. We do not do this, but I definitely support all the tour companies that do this. They have a dinner service. So you can hire some transportation for dinner plans, and it's pretty well priced. So that's a good option to get to the restaurants.
So besides the Northwest wine tours, you also have a wine club, a Northwest wine club, which I'm fascinated to hear about. So tell me about the wine club, how you started it, and how it all worked.
Just like the mission was to make wine country accessible for the wine shuttle, I really have the same mission for the wine club. It's how do we get people to get to know this area, not just as a wine country, but like as a community that has restaurants and that has nurseries and things that you'll probably want to come and experience as a traveler or as a local. So the wine club, the idea is to get to know multiple wineries in a year, but not too many, right? It's the same thing with the shuttle. I don't want a route of 20 wineries. I have a route of 7. And I do that very specifically because 7 is still a lot to choose from. And so our wine club features 2 wineries every quarter. So that would be 8 a year. And I wanted to make sure that you weren't just getting one bottle from that winery, but that you kind of had this opportunity to get to know the winery. So you can either do a shipment of 4 bottles, which would be 2 from each winery, or a shipment of 6 bottles, which would be 3 from each winery. And we're talking current release. And the idea is that then I'm going to incentivize you with discounts for private tours and or shuttle passes. So now you're encouraged to come to the winery and experience the full flight and get to know the place. So I'm trying to make it accessible. I'm bringing it to your door now. I'm giving you an opportunity to break the ice and get to know new wines and new wineries. And then I'm giving you a good reason to then come into the Valley and visit and to leverage our ability to curate. In each of the wine club shipments, I include a card with the theme, the last theme in May. For this quarter, you've got Mother's Day, Memorial Day, Father's Day, 4th of July. It's all about families. It's all about coming together. So I featured wineries that were about family. Both of these wineries are the sons and daughters of the founders who have, taken the great honor of becoming the winemakers. They've got kids and their kids are in harvest and their kids are helping out. And to me, that just seemed like a very good theme. But I also tried to pick 2 wineries that were close together. So if you were going to come out to the Valley and you were a member of the wine club, I also include an itinerary. Whether we take you or whether you do it on your own, I give you recommendations for the timing. You get complimentary tastings just like any other wine clubs through our wine club from the wineries that are featured, and wine discounts. So the number one reason why anybody joins a wine club is for the discounts. In my opinion, it's to buy wine that you love at a discounted price. Obviously, many wineries have additional perks, complimentary tastings, etc. But for most of us, it's a commitment to wine at a discounted price. So I give you the itinerary, and I even tell you where to go to lunch, or where to buy a good pie. What's a great place that you're going to pass while in between these two wineries that you might also enjoy, that allows you to get to know this area. And then we've got a concierge email. And if you would like me to plan it and make your reservations, of course, we will take care of that for you. So you don't even have to think about it. And also, instead of shipping the wine, how about we just make that wine be at the winery? And so when you come get your complimentary tasting and experience that winery, then you can grab your wine club shipment there. We're trying to do things that, make it logical, that help people get to know the area, well priced, but current. Yeah. And it's really fun. I found that I love doing the wine shuttle, but I've really loved doing the wine club. And it's surprising because I didn't know completely what I was getting into, but picking the wine and getting to know the wine side of things and getting to know these wineries at a different level has really been fun.
So is it hard to pick the wines for the wine club? I bet that's tough.
Sometimes it's super easy, but when I get a theme in my head, then I feel like I have, like this last one, I wanted it to be about family, which there's a ton of wineries that have glorious, family operations, but I also wanted to feature some really good white wine. So I started to narrow down my parameters. And so I definitely put some hardship on myself trying to find the winery that really represented my vision. Of course, could I pull together wineries that would be fabulous regardless of that vision? Yes. But I am who I am, and I add that extra challenge because I had a vision and I really want to make it happen.
I really like the idea of the wine club because you're going to get to try different wineries around the Willamette Valley, which I think is really cool. And with that, you get the perks of being a club member at those specific wineries, I think you said. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So, the big differentiator, I will say, is if you're a member at the wineries specifically, you'll get complimentary tastings, for example, over the course of your entire membership. If you're a member of ours, you'll get a single complimentary tasting in the year that winery is featured. So a little different, right? But at the same time, you're getting it at 8 different places, which you're probably not going to, go to that many wineries and have that many tastings in a year. And, the idea of this wine club is not to be the only wine club. It's to be the wine club that you join to get to know the valley and to get to know new wines and understand this place that you likely live close to. You might fall in love with a winery and with the perks and the people and decide to join them directly and maybe leave my club. And that's totally okay because guess what? We've got the shuttle and we're still here to serve you in whatever way makes sense.
The only thing I was bummed out about when I saw the wine club is that it's shipping to Oregon only. So I was thinking, gosh, this would be a great club for me. I'd love trying different things. So the fact that you would send me different wines that I probably have not experienced before would really be something that I would love. But it's Oregon only. And I know you make that clear on the website and you say why it is. It has to do with the laws of shipping, from state to state, and that all makes sense. But I wish I could take part. I would sign up as a member. I think it'd be awesome.
I know. Thank you so much. I think as we grow, Washington and California are the next on the list because when you look at the visitors coming to the Willamette Valley, Washington and California are the two biggest contributors to our tourism. And of course, I'd love to include shipping. And I know that there's lots of lovers of Oregon wine in both places. So I think that's coming soon.
So a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about before we go is some of the things on the website that I really liked. The first one was the 2-minute tasting tips podcast that you do. I really liked the little short kind of segments that you put together with the tips and all that stuff. So for people who haven't heard it, what is that for? Why do you do that? And what can people expect from those?
Yeah, so often there's barriers that make it intimidating to plan a trip to wine country. And so I try to offer up tips that make that planning easy, that help you make choices and plan new and interesting experiences. So for example, I have talked about groups and group sizing and the ideal group size and why. So I've talked about why to join a wine club, not just our wine club, but any wine club. What's your priority? Why would you do it? And I tried to talk people through what that thought process is. And I really try to give tangible feedback. I'm a lover of listening to lots of educational podcasts when they give tangible takeaways. So oftentimes in the podcast, you'll hear me give a challenge. I challenge you to go visit some of these wineries that allow kids that are off the beaten path. One of the gals that you had on, it was Brenna from Frog's Leap again. She said there's a winery for everyone. And I truly believe in that. There is a winery for everyone. I'm trying to help you find it. I'm trying to give you different classifications, different buckets, different things that you might experience at these places to help you find that winery that you're looking for. I have, a podcast that talks about as you get more rural, you find more nurseries, big nurseries that are amazing for, buying, plants and flowers for your gardens. And then you're right in wine country. So why not put them together? Wine taste and visit a nursery that's in that area. And I'm going to help you connect this. That's pumpkin patches. There's a ton of pumpkin patches in the Wilamette Valley. People from Portland drive out here to go to the pumpkin patch, but you're like 10 minutes from wineries. So why not pair them together? So I'm trying my best to look at experiences and to give you advice so that you don't go into it blind, that you understand and don't feel uncomfortable because you don't know all the rules and the policies and this and that.
The other thing I really liked about the website was the 30-second winery tour videos that you talked about a little bit earlier. And I thought that was such a cool idea because for the reasons that you gave earlier, if you've never been to any of these wineries before, you have no idea what they look like, you have no idea what the experience looks like. It may help to see these videos to see what the wineries are all about, and it may help you make a decision on what may fit what you're trying to accomplish on your itinerary. So I thought that was a really cool thing. So tell me about those. And do you do the recording on those? They're pretty well done.
Yeah. I try to think about I am a customer of wine country and I face the same things in order to know what I know. And so I want to know what these wineries look like, if you're going to charge a $50 tasting fee, but I can't see what my experience is going to be. And I hate to be judgmental from an aesthetic standpoint, but sometimes you just kind of want to know what vibe you're getting into depending on what your objectives are, right? I just felt like 30 seconds is short enough that I think somebody could watch probably most of it. Our attention spans are short, but 30 seconds seemed short enough that you could get a pretty good idea. And I also wanted to leave some room for you to have some surprises. So I don't want to show you everything. I want you to see enough to be enticed to want to go visit. And so I might just show you something that's interesting that might pique your interest to something that's, makes the experience at that winery unique, whether it's a cool looking fireplace or a sculpture or the tasting rooms are built into horse stables or, whatever. These things are special. It's part of the story of these wineries. Also, these wineries have amazing landscapes. There's so many ideas you could get. You could get plants ideas. Winery doors are amazing. So anyways, I try to capture those things in 30 seconds. And I hope to build a very comprehensive library for visitors of the Valley to be able to have some snippets into these tasting rooms. And it's just kind of fun if you're curious. It's interesting to see all these places that you can't possibly visit anyway.
One last question I have for you. Somebody who, doesn't have a lot of experience with wines in the Willamette Valley. Can you give me a couple of wines that you think really represent what the Willamette Valley is all about that maybe we here in other states could get and, maybe buy and have sent to them or something like that? I'm just looking for something that really represents Willamette Valley, in your opinion.
You kind of look at some of the founding families, and one of them that stands out in my local community is Wright Sellers. Ken Wright's been really influential in the Yamhill Carlton AVA in establishing many of the wineries here. And he's planted many of the vineyards, he's helped out everywhere. And so I just feel like his wine kind of represents and many of the wine around is influenced by his winemaking mentorship and so forth and so forth. So Ken Wright is a big one. A new winery that's come to the valley that's bringing the French winemaking style, which I think pairs really well with the varietals that we have here, is Resonance. They have vineyards in both the Dundee and the Carleton area, which represent different soil types. So you kind of can get, and they have blends of both, and so it's a way to taste a larger sampling of the terroir in Oregon. You talked about Willamette Valley Vineyards. Willamette Valley Vineyards is the largest winery in Oregon. And I actually just visited recently, and I was not aware, but they actually produce a lot of different kinds of wine. And you wouldn't know it because it's a large winery. There's a mass distribution. So wherever your listeners are, they could likely find some Willamette Valley wine, whether it's Pinot or Pinot Gris, Chardonnay, etc. But they have a ton of wine that you can't get in distribution, and it's great, and a ton of different varietals. They source grapes from all over Oregon, including Southern Oregon, and then up towards Walla Walla on the Oregon side. And so you can get all the bold red varietals, the Cabs, the Tempraneos, but then you get all the quintessential Willamette Valley varietals. So it's a really good representation of Oregon holistically. Plus, they're a larger winery, and so they have resources, and so a great place to kind of get a good picture of what we're about.
Well, I really appreciate your time and teaching me about your business, and I wish I lived close. I would go tasting all the time in Oregon if I could. So people who want to know more about how to, what you offer, and, want to know how to book a tour and all that other stuff, what's the best place for them to go?
The best place is our website, which is nwwineshuttle.com. So I pronounce it as Northwest Wine Shuttle, but it's nwwineshuttle.com. And that's where all the stuff that we've talked about is, all of the services and all of the content, which of course I enjoy. And if you have a question, if you're considering visiting the Valley, just shoot us an email and I can point you in the right direction, whether it's in my services or whether you're better served through others. We are a wine country of servicing, the guests of the wine country, and whether I do that best or whether my colleagues from other tour companies do it best, or from other frontline places, the hotels, et cetera, we're going to point you in the right direction. And that's my favorite part of the job. Come to the website and then go from there.
All right. Well, Kim, thank you very much. Like I said, I really appreciate taking all this time. I know how busy you probably are with all of this stuff that you're doing. I hope people go to the website, take advantage of what you have to offer, because I think it's awesome. Thank you so much, Kim. Take care. Have a great night.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you too.
I know I say this all the time, but that has to be one of my favorite interviews, because I really know how hard it is to plan a wine tasting trip. And the Northwest Wine Shuttle really makes it easy for people visiting the Willamette Valley. If you plan on visiting the Willamette Valley, I encourage you to go to nwwineshuttle.com and take advantage of one of their tours. If you live in Oregon, take advantage of that amazing Northwest Wine Club and experience great wines from all over the Willamette Valley and discounts on the Northwest Wine Shuttle. Finally tonight, I'm creating a page on the new show website at www.obsessedwithwine.net for Father's Day. There I'll be posting some amazing wine gift ideas for all the wine-loving dads out there. I'm a father of 3, and there's nothing better than receiving wine or wine accessories for Father's Day. If you need an idea for a great Father's Day wine gift, look for the Father's Day page on the website in the next few days. Join me for another new episode of the Obsessed with Wine podcast every Saturday at midnight Pacific time. I have some incredible interviews coming up that you really are not going to want to miss. Until then, cheers!